Thank you, Alia and Sandra, for your work. It was really interesting. I have a question about does these kind of plants have to have some kind of special qualities, or are basically any plant good for the phytoremediation on a bigger scale?
They need to have long roots so they could extract all the heavy metals. The long roots is needed for it to be more efficient, more quick.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for a very interesting work. My question is it healthy to eat the seeds of sunflowers after that process?
That's a great question. I think that it's not very healthy, but for example, there are some plants used that are not edible, and I personally wouldn't eat, for example, the sunflower or mustard, knowing that it absorbs the heavy metals, because I would be a little bit scared because the plant absorbed the heavy metals to itself. So.
Yes, but what should we do with these plants? We can't feed them to animals. We have to put it somewhere, and the soil will be contaminated again.
I think that maybe we can use it as a...
Maybe for producing biogas?
Wait.
For biogas, also to...
I forgot the word, and I asked my English teacher, fertilizer. I think that we can use it for fertilizer when we bake.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you guys have one more question from the crowd? Give you a microphone.
Hi, you should burn the plants. You burn them in a heating plant where you have filters for the heavy metals. A question I have to you, did you get any weed in the pots? Any weeds? You had, weed?
The sound is a little
Okay,
bit...
do you know what a weed is? It's a plant you don't want in the pot.
I know what weed is, yeah.
Did you get any in your pots?
Sorry, did I...
Did you get any weeds growing in your pots?
Weeds in
You had your sunflower, but did you have a small weed growing close to the sunflower in the pot?
No, there were not any weeds near the sunflower. We had one pot, and we planted the sunflower in a pot, and there weren't any weeds near, if I understood the question correctly.
Unfortunately, we don't have any more time. Thank you, girls, and I guess have a great day. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. The technology sometimes lets us down when we most need it. But I'll go quickly over the basics of our conference. The program of the conference is available online by scanning the QR codes on the walls or typing in the address of the website. The conference is also broadcasted live on the web. The link to the live broadcast is available in the conference booklet on the website and the Facebook page of Tartu Jaan Poska Gymnasium. I also have a lovely bell on my table, and I will ring it when either 5 or 10 minutes is up. This is the notice for presenter or presenters that time is up. If you still have some information to give, finish it up in a minute. When the time for questions is over, I'll make a remark on this as well. And the girls who just presented us were from Lithuania, from Kaunas, and their names were Alja Abo Amra and Sandra Janula Vichute. But now we can get back on track, and on the clock it's time to investigate the ground. Karoliina Maria Birk from Jaan Poska Gymnasium will help us on the investigation, as she will tell us about the comparison of soil in cottage and townhouses. The stage is yours.
Good afternoon, honorable committee and listeners. My name is Karoliina Maria Birk, and my research topic is comparison of soil in cottage and townhouse. Yes. Oh. The purpose of my work was to compare soils in Tartu and Põlva County. The excavations are marked on the map. The hypothesis was that these are the same type of soils, and I had two research questions. Firstly, does the soil map correspond to reality? And the second one, what are the similarities and differences in the soil of the selected areas? In theory, I described the construction of soil, what is soil, how it's formed, and what its parts are. And I also wrote about soil maps and how to use them. Then I described soil excavation and why it's needed for soil exploration. Common excavation methods are soil bit in depth of humic layer, and a hole created using a soil auger. I described the type of soil I chose, which is pseudo-basaltic soil. Finally, I explained the research methods I used in laboratory, and I described the chemical elements which are in the soil, like phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, nitrogen, and carbon. The photo shows the solutions to be analyzed and calibration solutions according to the Turing method. Extracts from the soil map can be seen here, and the locations of the excavations are marked with a dot. The picture on the left shows the excavation in the townhouse, and the picture on the right shows the excavation in the cottage. It can be seen from both pictures that these are the same type of soils, just the subtype is different, but that's not that significant change in the results. Practical part consists of 3 stages. Firstly, I did an excavation, which means digging a hole to a meter depth, which can also be seen in these photos. The picture on the left shows the excavation in the cottage, which is made with a shovel, and the picture on the right shows the excavation in the townhouse, which is made with a small machine. Excavations were carried out in September 2021. From excavations, I determined the horizons and took samples for laboratory analysis. I performed the analysis in University of Life Sciences, and based on the results from laboratory and excavations, I started to compare soils. These tables shows all the results from the laboratory tests. These numbers themselves say little, but I started to analyze and compare them. For example, the results showed that the soils are weakly acidic in both areas. For example, if you look at the sample number 3, this is the this is the most neutral sample. This is the lowest layer in the cottage. And the nutrients found and analyzed in my work are phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Also, if we look at the phosphorus column, we can see a very high index in the top of layer of the city. This number is 27, which is almost 4 times higher than the average norm. And it's also known that variable land was used in that area, and phosphorus-containing fertilizer was used, and this does not disappear from the soil over time. Firstly, I learned that these are the same type of soils. Secondly, the soil map corresponds to reality, which means these are the same type of soils. Thirdly, the soils are in a good condition, but they need to be fertilized to start farming. And the main differences were in the amount of nutrients due to human activities, and also certain elements are affected by soil source rock. My suggestions for the next similar work would be, firstly, similar work can be done, but another type of soil can be studied. And secondly, 2 different soil types can be explored with the aim of making the greatest possible difference. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Karolina. And once again, it's time for questions and comments.
So thank you. I'll start with the opponent's questions. Why was the same method, so shovel, lever, and measuring tape, not used for excavation in the townhouse?
The same method was not used for excavation in the townhouse because the excavation in the cottage was first to be carried out, and it turned out to be very time-consuming and physically hard. So I used a small machine in the city, which reduced the amount of time and also the physical work. But the surface corrections were made with a shovel, and I also used measuring tape for taking photos in both places.
Mm-hmm. And did the machine, which was used for excavation, allow samples to be taken with sufficient accuracy?
Yes, the machine I used for excavation allowed the samples to be taken with sufficient accuracy because the machine I used didn't dig a lot of soil at once. And also the ultimate accuracy wasn't that important in my work because I only took samples and made photos of the layers.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. I just wanted to ask you if your work was part of a bigger research project or...
No.
Oh, okay. So does this information help maybe some gardeners or farmers? How can it be used?
Yeah, like I already mentioned that they need to be fertilized to start farming, and yeah, and if you look at the table, we can see the numbers that like if some number is too high, we can just make it smaller and otherwise.
Thank you. A really interesting work. And well, that was a big hole there. Good job. I was just wondering, you said that the soils were in good condition.
Mm-hmm.
What makes a soil a good one? What qualities does it have to have?
In the case of cottage, it's like neutral. It's not fertilized, and but in the case of city, like there are still trees and bushes, and all the plants are growing, and it's not in a bad condition.
Okay, thank you, Karolina.
We only unfortunately have time for one more question. I don't know who is coming from.
I have a question for you. If you take up your values there you had on the different chemicals, I don't know if you commented that in Forest City the phosphorus is 27. Why was it so high there?
yeah, the phosphorus-containing fertilizer was used, and it does not disappear from the soil.
Where in the ground did you take the samples? Up at the surface of the?
There were 3 layers, and each layer, 6 samples.
Okay, we don't have, unfortunately, no more time, so thank you, Karolina. Languages are awesome, especially when one can speak different ones. Martin Wendt from Jaan Poska Gymnasium has made a study of languages and multilingualism in Tartu Jaan Poska Gymnasium and how it is connected to knowing languages. The stage is yours.
Hello, my name is Martin Wendt, and the title of my research is Multilingualism in Tartu Jaan Poska Gymnasium and how it is connected to knowing languages. And my supervisor was Mari Roostik. My research had 2 main questions. The first one was how does speaking different languages every day affect the ability to recognize foreign languages? And the second one was how does multilingualism affect students' everyday lives. Theoretical part describes multilingualism and its different aspects. For example, multilingualism is divided into personal and societal. It also describes how multilingualism can affect people. For example, multilingual people are better at separating important information from non-important information. And lastly, it describes language learning in schools. Mainly it describes Estonian school system, and the Estonian school system requires students to learn at least 2 foreign languages. I had 2 groups of students. They were divided into groups by their first language at home. In total, I had 8 students, 4 students who speak Estonian and 4 who speak Russian at home. And I used interviews and tests. Tests were divided into 2 parts. In the first part, the participants had to recognize languages by listening, and in the second part, they had short written sentences, and they had to guess languages. They also had to translate the written sentence. In the first part, there was 14 languages, and in the second part, there were 10 languages. Interviews showed that switching between languages is not hard, because all the students said they don't have difficulties switching between languages. Also, all participants feel that they are comfortable speaking in Estonian and English, and this is not depending on their first language. But the difference came in the languages they use every day, because students who speak Estonian at home use only Estonian every day in school and at home. But the second group speaks Russian at home and Estonian in schools. Here are 2 graphics. In the first graphic, there's results from the first part. In total, there were 14 languages, and students from monolingual families were more successful. In the second part, the results were quite equal, but in the translation part, students from multilingual families were more successful because they could translate the whole sentence, but students from monolingual families could only translate some parts of the sentences. Also came out more known languages, for example, Estonian, English, Finnish and French, because all the participants could recognize those languages. Conclusions. According to this research, it is easier to recognize languages by listening. Secondly, code switching, or in other words, mixing languages, is a common part of language learning, because all the participants said that they use or have used code switching. Thirdly, speaking multiple languages every day helps to learn new languages, because also all the participants said that it is easier to learn the third language than the second. And lastly, speaking multiple languages every day does not affect the ability to recognize languages, but speaking and learning more languages overall does. And thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Once again, time for comments and questions.
Thank you. So, what is multilingualism by definition, and are there students in Tartu Jaan Poska Gymnasium who are monolingual by that definition?
By definition, multilingualism is an ability to speak 2 or more languages, and by that definition there are no monolingual students in Tartu Jaan Poska Gymnasium, because, like I said, the Estonian school system requires students to learn at least 2 foreign languages, and that already makes them multilingual.
What advantages do the students who speak multiple languages every day have over the students who speak only one language, and vice versa?
Students who speak different languages every day should have the advantage in switching languages. It comes more smoothly for them because they use it every day, and also they are better at choosing their language according to their partner they're speaking with. The other way around, students who speak only one language every day, they don't have to think about their language they're gonna use, because at school and at home they use the same language, and they don't have to think, do they use Estonian or Russian or even other languages.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. How do you explain why the monolingual students were better in recognizing other languages? And what language or which languages were unrecognizable?
It is hard to say why monolingual students were better, but like I said before, speaking and knowing more languages overall affect ability. So I saw that students who learned more languages were better, and that put the average score up.
Okay, and the test group was quite small too. Maybe there would be more students.
Yeah, my group was pretty small, so to make big conclusions, it is hard.
Yes, and the other languages, or which of them were not to recognize?
Some
Chinese?
languages were not recognizable. For example, Hungarian, because nobody could recognize that language.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for any more comments. I'm sorry, committee. Thank you, Martin. health is a big concern for all of us. Katrina Luisa Stalnelka from Jurmala will tell us more about health. She has made a study of Jurmala State Gymnasium youth knowledge on reproductive health, sexual relations and responsibility issues. The stage is yours.
So, good afternoon. Today I will tell you about my scientific work. I'm a 12th grade student at Jurmala State Gymnasium, Katrina Stalneka. The topic of my scientific work is Jurmala State Gymnasium youth knowledge of reproductive health, sexual relations and responsibility issues. The supervisor is Jurmala State Gymnasium science teacher Anda Lipste. I choose this topic because societal sustainability indicators the health of the youngest generation. The desire to assert oneself and experiment leads to impulsive action without thinking about consequences, as well as the desire to know the views and actions of young people in different situations. Purpose of the work: to clarify the knowledge of Jurmala State Gymnasium students about reproductive health, sexual relations, and accountability questions. Hypothesis: if the young people of Jurmala State Gymnasium are sufficiently educated and informed about reproductive and sexual issues, then the possibility of developing sexual transmitted diseases as well as avoiding unwanted pregnancies will decrease. Work tasks: to compile statistics on the numbering of abortions for young women aged 13 to 19, develop a study tool questionnaire, collect and analyze the obtained data, and to interview the profession of midwife. Research methodology: literature and source analysis, questionnaire, unstructured interview, and statistical data processing and analysis. The work consists of 4 parts, 8 subsections, bibliography, and 5 appendices. Research results: I have included in the presentation only some of the results of the survey. In my opinion, the most important. Young people aged from 13 to 19 from the Jurmala State Gymnasium was interviewed. A total of 204 respondents were surveyed. In this picture you can see how many respondents have had sexual intercourse with the opposite gender. 80% of respondents said that they have not had sexual intercourse with the opposite gender. And in this picture you can see why young people would allow themselves or their partner to have an abortion, and 52% said that they would never have had abortion, while the rest said that they would have had an abortion for a variety of reasons, for example, early pregnancy, illnesses, and poor financial condition. This picture shows the respondent's opinion whether he or she has sufficient knowledge to avoid STDs and unwanted pregnancies. These results confirm the hypothesis because 66%, which is the most, respondents say that they have enough knowledge to avoid STDs and prevent unwanted pregnancies. Conclusions. More than half of the respondents cited the internet as their main source of information on reproductive health, confirming the importance of the media in shaping public opinion today, as well as the need to provide accurate and accessible information on issues of interest. And despite already started the sexual life, several respondents believe that there is not enough knowledge to prevent STDs and unwanted pregnancies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Katria. And once again, it's time for questions and comments.
Thank you for the work. It was really interesting. I was wondering whether there was differences in the knowledge between girls and boys. Did you study that?
No, I just ask their year, and I don't ask like you're a boy or a girl.
Oh, okay.
I just ask questions and years.
And I have another question. Do you think it's good that the main source of information is internet? Is that a good thing or bad? What do you think?
From one side, yes, it is good because teenagers is interesting in that things, but it is better if these things also, for example, these things talking with parents and in family also, because internet is also not so good source to yes.
Thank you, Katrina. If you were in charge of raising young people's awareness of reproductive health, what do you think should be done to for the young people to be more aware of their health?
Maybe more elections in school. Yes, now it is impossible because there's COVID time also 2 years, but I think yes, elections and maybe specialists can learn that, and also in school in biology and lessons, maybe teachers learn something like that, and yes.
Okay, thank you. That was a really good work you did, and I really encourage you to publish the results of this.
We have time for one more question. Anyone? Of course. On my way already.
The ones who said that they had already had sexual, but still didn't know about STI and preventing them from. Do you have any explanations why they didn't know anything, as I said, or very too little?
I don't know because I don't ask them, but I think maybe they are not interested in that. But maybe in schools there are. A little bit information about that. Maybe we need more, for example, teacher attention to that, I think. Yes.
Thank you.
And also parents.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions. Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you.
Now it's time to dive into fashion. Anna-Viia from Jaan Poska Gymnasium will tell us about creating a 3-piece fashion collection inspired by Arnold Axberg's painting, and maybe even show them.
Dear listeners, my name is Anna-Viia, and my project was creating a 3-piece fashion collection inspired by Arnold Axberg's paintings, and these are my beautiful models. and they are wearing my 3 pieces of collection from our collection. First aim of the project was to make a fashion collection. I made it in collaboration with my good friend Anette Merive from Tallinna Reaalkool, and our collection is called Composition. Second aim was to introduce the life of Arnold Akberg, an Estonian painter, and analyze his paintings and creative periods. Third aim, which I think is the most important, was recycling, because it pushed me to think outside the box, because I only had little pieces of fabric. And the fourth aim was to participate in an Estonian fashion show called Main Street. These are Arnold Akberg's paintings, and I took inspiration from them because I like the bold colors and straight lines, and these paintings remind me of buildings, and I try to put that into my outfits. Tasks for the project, first one was to research information about Arnold Akberg, the painter. Then I had to put my designs into sketches. Then I had to find material. As I mentioned before, I wanted to use only recycled materials, so I found them from home, and the other fabric I found from Facebook groups. Then I had to do the sewing part, and I had a lot of help from my supervisor and sister, Laura Via. And finally, we had to get ready for the fashion show. Keywords for my work are innovation, creativity, and recycling. And I think the most important one is recycling, because it pushed me to be more creative and innovative, because, as I said before, I only had little pieces of fabric, so I had to think creatively. Technique that I used was I sketched my ideas on the paper. I found materials from home and Facebook. Then I registered to fashion shows like Main Street, Roosad Käärid and Moeke, but only Main Street took place because of COVID. Then I made the sewing patterns, and finally I completed the collection. As a first result, we finished a fashion collection called Composition in collaboration with Anette Merive. I gave an overview of Arnold Akberg's life and paintings and analyzed his creative periods, and I only used recycled materials. Proposals for future projects might be to have a better time management, because when the fashion show came closer, we understood that we didn't have music or video or hair or makeup, so we had very little time to think of that. And if somebody would want to do the fashion collection themselves, they could use the same idea with different inspiration. And this is a picture of our collection Composition, and this shows my work and Anette's work. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Hanna. And now, once again, it's time for Q&A.
Thank you. Why did you decide to design the collection with Anette Merive, and how did the collaboration go?
I decided to design the collection with Anette Merive because we have been friends for 14 years, so we knew the collaboration would go well. That answers to the second question. And from the start, we had the same idea, so we didn't have any arguments.
How does the author see herself in the future in the field of fashion?
I don't think I can see myself in the field of fashion because I didn't like the sewing part, but I like the designing part, so I have thought about architecture.
And what is the role of fashion and the responsibility of a fashion designer in society?
I think in today's world, the responsibility of a fashion designer is to make clothes that help people express them through their outfits and make everyone feel unique.
Thank you, Hanna. That was super cool. Let's start with that. While you were talking, I was thinking about, wow, is that your style now? But you already said you're not seeing yourself in the fashion, maybe. But would you say that would be your style, like that kind of abstract
Yes.
shapes and?
I think I have always thought when you go to the fashion shows, you have to think of something that hasn't been done before. So yeah, I just try to do things that I haven't seen myself.
That's so cool. And do you have a favorite piece you made, or do you like making some kind of shirts or skirts or something? Especially.
I first really liked the yellow and the white one, but when I started making all of them, I don't have a favorite.
Spoken like a true designer.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very impressed. If you still would do a next collection, which artist it would be? It will inspire you.
I don't think I would want to take inspiration from a painter again, because it would seem boring. So I would want to take inspiration from something else.
Okay, and a very practical question. What shall you do with your collection now, after?
I think they're gonna stay in my closet for a long time. And some pieces I think somebody would want to wear. So I think I'm gonna give them to my friends who want them.
Okay, or maybe to sell it for caritative purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have questions from the crowd? You don't have a question. Oh, wow. Anyone else? Seems like not. Then thank you, Hanna. We have already been able to taste the delicious coffee creams in the Peace Room. Now, let's hear how it came to be. Kairiin Kodala, Merili Käblik, Cassandra Pastak, Susanna Vassil from Jaan Poska Gymnasium will tell us more on their student company KOF.
Why is that Kairiin doesn't make herself a coffee at home? Wouldn't it be way cheaper and less time consuming? Well, there's an easy answer to that. In her opinion, homemade coffee is not just quite the same as the cafeteria's one. And I'm sure that along with Kairiin, there are other people in this room who can relate to that.
Hello everybody. We are 4 students from young Poska Gymnasium and we run a small company named Pop. All of our team members love coffee and that is what unites us.
I am the team leader, Kailin. My task is to make sure that everything is done before due dates, and I also share tasks among us. I designed our website.
I am our team's financial manager, and even though my main job tasks were running Excel tables and doing difficult calculations, I am also the face behind our Dreamers labels and logo.
I am Sandra, our marketing manager, and as the name says, my job is to advertise our product to as many people as possible.
And I am Sana, and I'm the development manager, and I'm trying to develop our creamers recipes to the point that we're satisfied with it, which is right now. And our students' company has a solution to everyone, like Irene, who tend to enjoy coffee just a tad bit more if it tastes more similar to a coffee made by qualified baristas. And what is even more amazing is that we are the first company in Estonia to bring vegan coffee creamers to the market. We have made coffee making with our creamers as easy as possible to our customers. Shake the bottle, add the creamer to black coffee, and enjoy.
So what is a plant-based flavored coffee creamer? We added different ingredients to lactose and gluten-free oat milk to make it even more nutritious. For example, we added well-known fiber called inulin that keeps your stomach full and also adds nice texture to the creamer. We also add flavors to the creamers. Right now we have 3 flavors. Mellow cinnamon for spice lovers, timeless vanilla for people who like subtle but sweet taste, and candy caramel for sweet juice. Cinnamon creamer doesn't have any added sugar, and caramel creamer is the sweetest from all 3.
But it's not just about comfort and a wonderful taste experience, but we also have a program mission, which is to do our best to save the environment and keep our business's ecological footprint as small as possible. That is also why we have decided to use oat milk, which is not only more environmentally friendly from an animal milk production, but also the most environmentally friendly in comparison to other non-dairy products.
Coming back to our class's latecomer Kairi, among her, another 120,000 disposable coffee cups are thrown away in Estonia per day. We, however, produce our creamers into glass bottles, which all in all makes the package reusable and also has a potential of refill usage in the future.
Adding more features, our product is affordable to any coffee lover. For €3.50, you can make 4 coffees instead of buying one. Thus, our product has reached more than 300 people who appreciate vegetarian foods or just drinking coffee.
Market potential is even bigger. Over half of Estonians drink coffee daily, and popularity of plant-based drinks grows by 8% every year. That shows that only in Estonia we have one growing target group.
As our customer base grows, we have grown as a company and as individuals. We started our journey in a small kitchen, no knowledge about food production. Our first test trials were far from what we expected the creamers to be, and after a few failed tries, we were starting to lose our motivation. But luckily, we found our way to garage for the food hackathon, where we won a prize that included use of 30 University of Life Sciences laboratory equipment and food technologies systems. After many failed trials and months of product development, our creamers finally looked and tasted like we expected them to. While making creamers, we were also able to form a loving and supporting fan base. Our content in TikTok has gotten over 35,000 views.
The income of our company is over 1,000 euros, of which quarter is profit. We lost 700 euros of potential income at the Mega Fair in Tallinn, where most of our products spoiled. However, we took what happened as an opportunity to develop. We restored our financial position with the next fair and direct sales. We are now more careful than ever to protect our creamers from spoilage.
But instead of mishaps, let's focus on our accomplishments. At the very first fair in Tartu, we were lucky enough to receive the prize of the best company of the fair. Now, half a year later, when our student company's time is almost over, we received 2 prizes from the Estonian Best Students Company competition. This shows that even after a few unfortunate events, we were able to motivate ourselves as a team and make the rocky journey worth it.
Based on the experience of the students' company, we are quietly taking steps towards the future. Going further, we have 2 options where our paths could lead us. The first one is to sell our idea to a well-established company. Since right now we lack the equipment to start selling our products in stores. The second option, which has been the top of our goals for a while now, is to start selling our creamers to cafeterias, where our main target audience is. We have taken the first steps to accomplishing the dreams and have contacted cafes in Tartu.
While talking to the cafes, we understood that for a pleasant cooperation, we need to lower our prices even more. We made every last penny count and were able to lower the price by 20% per liter. We can also offer refill options that lowers the price even more and is also good for the environment.
And soon, Kairi can take a short walk to the cafe, grab our coffee creamer from there, and start every morning with a wonderful experience.
Feel like a barista.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. It's time for coffee lovers to fire away their questions.
So I'll be the first coffee lover and ask the opponents questions. The report indicates that you intend to continue your students' business. Are you planning to continue as a group of 4?
But we are planning to make a group meeting and then we will see what the future holds for us.
Are there any further plans to bring new flavors to the market? And if so, what kind of flavors?
So if we do decide to go on producing the creamers ourselves, then we will definitely keep up with the product development and look out for new flavors. We have conducted market research where we found out the most popular flavors among the people. So we kind of know what flavors we will do next, or try to do next.
And have you already made any specific agreements with any cafes?
We haven't made any specific agreements, but however, some cafes have shown interest and we're willing to give our creamers a try.
And just one question from the internet as well. Someone has asked, how much does one bottle cost?
3.5 euros.
Thank you.
Thank you, girls. Wonderful job. I checked your website. It looks really sweet. And your design with the presentation, that looks really awesome. So really great job. But I was wondering, is there anything you would like to share with your fellow students about making a company? Do you have any tips or tricks?
Well, I would say that making a company as a student business is really good way to try if anything in the business area is for you. It's like a free pass to do it because you have some things that you don't need to do when you would need to do them as a real company. And also you make good friends and have really good experience, so it's for sure something I recommend try out.
Oh, that's so good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. It was truly awesome. Actually, I wanted to say that we featured an article about you at the Estonian Research Council webpage. So right after you got the special prize at the Garage 48. So I'm really glad to see that you have developed your business. But I wanted to ask you, what's the boost you will need in order to start a real business from the student business?
So right now at the equipment we have to make the creamers. We have 2 blenders, so that means we can make 8 creamers in 2 hours. So it takes a really long time to go into the pairs and so on. So equipment, getting new equipment or improved equipment would be the first step.
If we could produce, for example, right now we could produce 2 liters from the blenders, but if we could produce 80 or something, then it would be a way faster and more convenient.
Yes, thank you very much. My question would be the experience with this student company. Would it encourage you to make an own company in the future? Not KOF, but any other company?
I think the experience personally that I got from this is very similar to making a real company. So I thought about this, making an own company in the future, but I'm not sure personally if I could, because it's a lot of pressure sometimes, and it's really hard work to keep up with the company. So.
And that's why I think the experience is so good, because you can see all the
also good.
Also good parts. You can see if you really want to go forward and start studying business or whatever. So I think for that we're also all thankful. So now if some of us know that we don't want to do any business related stuff, and this is sorted out at least.
Okay, it's like that. Not that is important what the experience is doing with you, but what you are doing with the experience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have some questions from the crowd?
Thank you. I congratulate you to a very nice product. I have got a couple of questions. I've been working as a CEO for a confection company, and I also work a lot with company establishment. And you have a good start, very good start. A question: do we have competition to your product?
As we said a few slides ago, we are first in Estonia to bring something like that. Firstly, we don't have coffee creamers plant-based in Estonia, and none of them are flavored. But in America, in USA, there are some competition, but just near to Estonia, we don't see anything like that.
Yeah, I think there are some creamers in Scandinavia, but I think in Estonia we are definitely the first ones. So in theory,
For how long does it keep the creamer? How long can you have it? Can you keep it in normal room temperature, or do you have to put it in the fridge?
so it has to be refrigerated, and if you haven't opened it, it stays for a month, and if you open it, it stays
7 days.
About 7 days.
Do you have a patent for the design or the composition? No, and I guess that. You were very good, because what you should do with the last question in the second part there, what kind of flavors? Don't tell anyone. That's when you come out with the product. I really congratulate you on nice work, and if you want some more tips, I worked a lot of this, so we can speak later.
Do we have some more questions? That's bribing. That's not allowed. Okay, but if you don't have any more questions, thank you, ladies. Although we had some technical issues in the beginning of the session, we have just managed to finish just on time. So we have, after this wonderful presentation about coffee, we just happen to have 20 minutes for coffee break. Be back here at 15:20. So we have made it to the final session of today, the fourth one. I still remind you the basics, but you'll probably have learned it by heart already. But the program of the conference is available online by scanning the QR codes on the walls or typing in the address of the website. The conference is broadcasted live on the web. The link to the broadcast is available in the conference booklet on the website and the Facebook page of Tartu Poska Gymnasium. Also, I have this lovely bell on my table, and I will ring it when 5 minutes or 10 minutes is over. This is a notice for the presenter or the presenters that the time is up. Although if you have some information to give, it's okay, finish it up in a minute. And when the time for questions is over, I will also make a remark on this. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand or type them in menti.com. The code is visible on the screen, and I think it's time to go. We already have an idea how Estonians deal with waste, but what about school canteens? Erika Jong-Lalic from Tibble is just the right person to give us a presentation about that.
Like this. What is systems thinking theory? It's a coherent set of analytic skills to improve the capability of identifying and understanding systems to be able to predict their behaviors. Concisely, the difference between weak and strong sustainability is that the latter one changes the basis of the problem instead of just allocating scarce resources. And why are scenarios important? They help us go from how will the future be to what can we do to shape the future in the way that we want it to be. Another thing is that they have proven to be very helpful in cases where the future is difficult to predict. For example, when we have a lot of uncertain factors that drive the system. The subject of food waste in the school canteens was chosen because it's a problem in our municipal, and which we believed we have the power to influence. According to the National Food Administration of Sweden, food waste accounts for 8 to 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions, and without unnecessary food waste, 3 billion people that today are starving would not be starving. In order to make these scenarios, I used qualitative systems dynamics modeling methods, mainly CLDs, stock and flow diagrams, and matrices. By using these methods, we could engage in fiction writing, creating plot lines, and evaluating consequences of certain decisions based on each scenario. And here you see a stock and flow diagram where the stocks are the squares and the amount of them are determined by the in and out flows, which are the other things like the circles that are not squares. And as you can see, each stock leads to food waste in different steps of this process. Some of you may recognize this. This is a causal loop diagram, often called a CLD. It's often used to determine which factors in a system have greater impact than others. Thus, we can choose the most favorable measures. The plus between the arrows shows that if I increase the first thing, the next thing will increase. And the minus signs are the opposite. So if I increase education on food waste, the number of people who take the food but throw it away will increase because there's a minus between those two, and vice versa. A diagram like this consists of different loops with 2 or more variables. So there's a big loop with the entire thing, and then there's several small loops in the big loop. And they can be reinforcing loops if all arrows are positive or there is an even number of negative arrows, because it's like basic math. 2 negatives make a positive. And reinforcing loops provides a constant increase in the system, but in reality this does not happen. And why does this not happen? It's because of the balancing loops that control them and give the system stability. A balancing loop consists of an uneven number of negative signs. And the 2 main leverage points identified were the school budget and the school canteen staff, because they were appointed to be the most uncertain and driving variables. There's the most number of arrows going into that point. Based on having identified these main leverage points, 4 different scenarios were made, as you can see on the screen. So there's high quality of canteen staff and a high school budget, and then there's a high quality of canteen staff but a low school budget, and so forth. And with the assistance of fiction writing, plot lines were created in the time span of 15 years. So in the middle there is present time, and then the outer circle is 15 years from now. And each quadrant is like one timeline for each scenario. So you have to like flip it to see where it starts and then where it goes. And in short, the timeline of how this is a timeline over how implemented choices in various scenarios will affect food waste, based on the fiction writing. And then, through all these methods, a matrix could be produced over how favorable each choice was for each scenario. So the zeros are that they're neither favorable or not, and the pluses are favorable and the minuses are not. And then lastly, another matrix was created, but based on the question, if I make decision 1, would that make scenario A more or less likely in reality? Since scenario A is the most desired, this was concluded that decision 2, the training of this canteen staff, was the ultimate choice to be implemented. So this is a very broad topic and difficult to give you a detailed picture in such a short time. So at least I hope you now feel that you have gained some insight into the subject, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Erika. And now, once again, it's time for questions and comments.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering whether there's a difference on how the food is being served in schools. For example, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Estonia we can see that in some cafeterias the food is being prepared with portions, and in other schools students can take as much as they like. So is there a difference in the waste?
We did not really do like a focused into that subject, but we did conclude that there's a difference in how much the student takes and how much food waste there is. So I would say yes, there is a difference probably if there's portions or not, because we concluded that if it's a more desirable meal, there's more food waste, which is odd because you think more people would eat it because it's better, but more people take too much food and then throw it away. So.
Thank you, Erika. I have to say that I love the fact that you not only overlooked the problem or went deep into the problem, but you offered solutions. Has there been any real actions after you did your research, came up with the solutions? Maybe in your school, have they taken your proposals into consideration?
No, we just finished this a few weeks ago, so.
Okay. Okay. Then I wish you good luck with it.
Thank you.
We have questions from the audience. Of course, I'm on my way already.
This is industrial thinking that you're doing, and my question is more of feeling. Do you look at your own family and your own behavior at home in a different way after this task?
Yes, a little bit actually. I got some few new brainstorms, so yeah.
And what do your parents think about that?
My mother is very into this sustainability and everything, so she's always been into it, so she's very glad that we all started thinking more about it.
Do we have more questions, ideas, comments? If not, then thank you, Erika. The past 2 years have been tough on us because of the coronavirus. Toomas Krastinš from Jurmala will run us through the history of pandemics and the insight these pandemics hold. Their use in minimizing the negative effects of COVID-19 pandemic. The stage is yours.
Yeah, okay. Hello. As you can see, I'm not going to repeat the title. It's quite a mouthful. I shortened it here to the history of pandemics and the insights these pandemics hold. These are the objectives and research questions. To analyze the meaning of terms epidemic and pandemic and if they have changed throughout history. Then examine pandemics in history, focusing on the ones I could get the most data on. Examining how COVID, its process happened in Latvia and globally. And to survey the public to better understand not only the public's opinion on pandemic control measures, are they too strict, for instance, are they too loose, but also to maybe understand general knowledge of pandemics. Do they have it or not? And yeah, the hypothesis is, can the knowledge gained from analyzing past pandemics be used to mitigate basically the effects of the current one? So a little bit of background. I looked at the start and end of pandemics, some history of them, and also the current World Health Organization guidelines. And as I already mentioned, I also looked at public knowledge of pandemic history. So, one of the ways I guess I could say conducted this research is I looked at the available literature, and one of these would be analyzing the words pandemic and epidemic. The thing is that according to current World Health Organization guidelines, an epidemic would be something that's an infectious disease that has spread in given community or population or region, and which spread is considered to be higher than normal. But there are a lot of variables in this, for instance, in classification of epidemics that differ from the affected population size, pathogen, lethality, what specific group is targeted. And pandemic basically is just an epidemic that in modern times has spread to another country, as far as I understand it. In terms of historical documents, I looked at one of the most interesting would be the pandemic that was that happened in Latvia during the Great Northern War. It was 1710, I think. Not the war, but the pandemic precisely. And yeah, I looked at some of its effects. I also compared how the pandemic happened in Latvia and globally. And I also conducted a survey on using Google Forms. It's quite interesting in terms of results. I will reveal them at the end of this presentation. Not yet. And yeah, I distributed the link to this on reddit.com and to some of my acquaintances. Here are the results. So as I said, the words epidemic and pandemic have often been used wrongly, interchangeably. I don't think it's really much of an issue since people sort of get it, they understand the meaning of it anyways. Also, looking at the pandemics in history, I noticed that pandemics have basically been a part of human life since, well, human life. They have been always present, almost periodic to a certain degree. So it is certain that we do need effective measures because it will certainly happen again. Another thing is that the use of quarantines, which the word quarantine comes from Venetian language and it means 40 days, because that was originally during the Middle Ages, during the Black Death. That was the amount of time that sailors had to self-isolate so they wouldn't spread the disease upon an unhealthy population. That deaths from COVID-related complications are fewer in Latvia, the global average. This is actually true today. I checked the statistics today as well, that in Latvia, for instance, the lethality is 0.7%, and globally it's 1.1%. And that many, from the survey I got that a lot of adults get their COVID-related news from friends, which I don't think is a reliable resource. And the hypothesis was proven correct that using the knowledge, mostly just the same measures that had been used before, that it is effective to somewhat nullify the effects of the pandemic. Okay.
Thank you, Thomas. And you already know, questions and comments.
Thank you for your work. I was wondering, in your opinion, what do you think was the biggest lesson we learned during the coronavirus pandemic as a society?
There's actually quite a few, I think, we have learned. Well, one is that it is going to happen again, just like the Spanish flu 100 years ago. We also learned that it has great, even if its lethality is not that great, its effect on, for instance, economy is great, not in the sense that it's good, but how large the effect is, and that, yeah, that it also messes up with mental health. So, yeah, we definitely need better measures to control them.
Well, thank you for your work. I read on your slides that you use some historical sources too for the history of the pandemics. And I assume you wrote something about this Black Death in the 14th century too.
Yeah.
A picture was, I believe, describing that period. And my question is now a bit folkloristic. what we are learning or how we are transferring this experience of diseases and pandemics. Is there anything about this epidemics or pandemics in Latvian Dinas?
As far as I know, there's very little. I only really found reference to some, not really the material itself, because as far as I know, the Black Death in the 14th century did sweep over the Latvian territory, though I didn't find any specific folklore pieces of it. Yeah.
Because this Black Death, it was in the Baltic provinces the last time after or during the Great Northern War in the early 18th century, but there was some lovely other diseases until the end of the 19th century, of course, like cholera in Riga in the early 19th century and so on. So maybe there, I thought just that.
Yeah, I didn't find any, So, like during the Great Northern War, even that pandemic, I didn't really find any reference to folklore references, mostly just historical documents about it, so, yeah.
Because in Estonian folklore, there are some stories about it. Like Black Death is coming as a small foreigner boy or an old man to the village, and then meeting people, and then everyone is dying. And I thought maybe you have some
perhaps there are, I just maybe haven't found them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have questions from the audience? Hendrik? Of course.
We have an interesting situation now that the Western countries has now released the bans because of Omicron, because Omicron is not, we don't think it's dangerous. But China has not. They're instead locking in Shanghai and maybe now Peking too, or Beijing is called. What do you think, and this is your I just want your personal comment, do you think China is doing the right thing?
Well, I think that us, Western countries, we didn't really get that huge of a spike. There was a spike at the end of January, start of February, a significant one, like in deaths and infection rates. But I don't really like some of the measures done by the Chinese government, which would be as strict as they can be. I have seen pictures of houses being, I don't know what's the correct word, almost stapled so the people couldn't leave. I don't think that's really the solution towards the problem. I think there's probably better ways to do it. Yeah.
Very insightful. Thank you.
Does anyone have other questions? If not, then thank you, Thomas. Have been heavy for most of our school time. It has led to back problems. Anja-Liisa Soudane and Melania Melgaile from Jurmala have studied the issue amongst JVG students and parents to get to know about the knowledge regarding the spine scoliosis, its influencing factors and treatment options. The stage is yours.
So, the topicality of our project. Many students nowadays are complaining about back problems, and parents can be unaware of slight deformities of the spine. Therefore, even daily tasks and activities like incorrect sitting position, carrying a bag on one shoulder, or asymmetrical sports can quickly increase the scoliosis. From friends and family, we have heard that there are many young people who have not been tested for posture in the last 10 years and have not paid attention to the level of vitamin D in their blood, which led to untreated spine deformations.
Goals of this project: to gauge Jurmala State Gymnasium students' parents' knowledge regarding spine scoliosis, its influencing factors, and treatment options.
Our hypothesis is that parents are not informed about spine scoliosis, its influencing factors, and treatment options.
Tasks at hand: learn about the available literature regarding spine's anatomy and psychology, and find information about scoliosis indicators and what to do if a spinal deformity is already apparent.
As well as create and spread questionnaires to middle school and high school students' parents.
Provide information to parents on the prevention of spinal deformities, as well as inform the public about the risk of scoliosis and encourage timely screening. Research method: quantitative parent surveying. It was concerted with the school principal and the parents.
To start off, scoliosis is a deformity of the spine with a lateral curvature of more than 10 degrees and rotation between the vertebrae.
Some of the causes are vitamin D deficiency in the blood, inappropriate sports, all asymmetrical sports, such as basketball, baseball, tennis, skateboarding, and unprofessional or excessive weightlifting.
And genetics and excessive use of muscles on one side of the body.
Scoliosis can occur in people with neuromuscular diseases or some serious problems with the spinal cord, carrying a bag on one shoulder, and improper furniture.
Anatomy of the spine. If a person has a deformity of the spine, the nerves coming from the spine are compressed, resulting in damage to the organs associated with the compressed nerve.
Scoliosis affects not only the nerve system, but also muscle function, shoulder position, breathing, shoulder symmetry, and ribs.
As you can see here, there are 3 types of scoliosis, of them being idiopathic, adult, and degenerative, which can be either structural or functional.
The most common symptoms are lower back pain, increased lumbar lordosis, pain or weakness in one or both legs, reduced bladder and bowel control, shortened hamstrings, and the course of the duck.
Here you can see some of the questions we asked the parents. For example, we asked about what should be the maximum weight of a school bag and how to choose a correct school bag. Also, we asked about their children's hobbies, like sports, and overall, how much do they know about scoliosis. We sent an informative Word document to the parents who responded that they would like to receive additional information on the prevention of spinal scoliosis. Here you can see the document. As it was concluded that parents' knowledge of scoliosis was insufficient, we conducted an information campaign by posting self-created materials on social networks about the risks of scoliosis to encourage children and parents to check their spinal health on time. The poster was posted on internet platforms such as Facebook and Instagram.
Conclusions. The goal set in the work was achieved. With the help of questionnaires, we found out the parents' awareness about the prevention of spinal scoliosis, the factors influencing it, and the treatment options. The available scientific literature was compiled, questionnaires were created and sent to the parents of the students.
Summarizing and analyzing the results of the survey, it was found that 18 children engaged in asymmetrical sports. It was also found that most of the students had tested their blood levels of vitamin D, however, it was not within the normal range.
It has been concluded that scoliosis can occur at any age, but the greatest risk in it is in adolescents, that is between 11 and 14 years, because at this age the bones begin to straighten and become inflexible.
The results of the questionnaires revealed that most of the students with scoliosis had at least one family member diagnosed with scoliosis, which means that this disease is more likely to be inherited. From the questionnaires, it was concluded that 12 women and 7 men had scoliosis, but other postural changes were also mentioned, such as asymmetric shoulder blades, one-sided asymmetry, chest tightness, shoulder girdle asymmetry, kyphosis, etc. It has been confirmed that girls over 6 years of age have a higher risk of spinal deformity.
The hypothesis was confirmed because the parents felt that they were informed, but the answers to the questionnaire suggested that the parents were either incorrectly informed or they just didn't know the correct answers on the questions asked. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ani and Melania. I was wondering, how is it in Latvia with screening for scoliosis? Do you have something in schools, like the nurse, school nurse? Do they look at the pupils
No,
or
at
anything?
our school?
We had, but now we don't have. Yeah, we had the nurse, but now in the last years we didn't have the tests for posture in the school, but we had it.
Okay. So when you were younger, you still had
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
checkups. Okay, because it's really easy to recognize the scoliosis. You basically can just download the app and put it on the back of your hands and look the grades, so to say.
Yes.
So it really should be done, and it's really easy to do. But that's interesting that there's no screening program for this. So there's room for growth. Thank you.
Do we have a question from the audience? Let's see, Henrik is nodding.
This is very interesting. Have you? I mean, you've seen that parents don't know. Have you informed the authorities of that?
The authorities?
I think you should present your findings to a politician who is interested in healthcare. Because if parents get more information, we can discover them earlier. How many percentage? What is the percentage of scoliosis in children in Latvia? Do you know that?
No,
No,
we
we
haven't
don't.
checked.
No. Okay. But very nice.
There are a lot of people who have scoliosis nowadays.
But as you said in the panel, it's easy to find, so with some information.
It's not quite so easy. If you have a scoliosis more than 10 degrees, then yeah, it's easy. But it starts at lower degrees, and then you can't see it with your own eyes, and you can't touch it. So you need to do a screening or test for posture. Yeah.
Very nice investigation. Thank you.
Does anyone else have some questions? I think not. So, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's working. I'll start over again. I think it's time to take a look into the dark worlds of drugs and into a bit shinier world of arts. Liisa Laius from Jaan Poska Gymnasium has combined both of the worlds, I hope not on herself, and she will tell us about the effect of cocaine and morphine on the central nervous system and how it is perceived in the works of Konrad Mägi.
Hello, dear listeners. I am Liisa Laius from Tartu Poska Gymnasium, and my research is called The Effect of Cocaine and Morphine on the Central Nervous System and How it is Perceived in the Works of Konrad Mägi. My supervisor was teacher Lauri Mällo. The aim of this research was to establish links between drugs that affect human body and human perception, and give a brief overview of the life and creative periods of the Estonian artist Konrad Mägi. The last part of this paper was to conduct an experiment among Tartu Poska Gymnasium students in ages between 16 to 19, and then after the experiment, analyze the results. My research questions were what are the effects of drugs on the central nervous system and whether people perceive the possible effect of drugs in works of art. My theory consisted of 4 parts. In the first part, I give a brief overview of the drugs and how the preparations may affect the human perception. The third part helps to understand how cocaine and morphine are made and how they affect the human central nervous system. And the last part gives a brief overview of the creative periods Konrad Mägi had. He had 3 creative periods. The first one was at the Åland Islands, the second one was in Norway, and the last one was in South Estonia. My work in progress was to study the effects of drugs on the central nervous system and then establish links between drugs that affect the human perception. Then I did an experiment among the gymnasium students and analyzed the results. The experiment consisted of 2 polls and 12 pictures. I chose 4 pictures of every creative period Konrad Mägi had, and the possible drug-affected pictures were painted in Norway and are marked in blue in the result sheet. Here you can see the poll number 1 and poll number 2. As you can see, the most popular choices were 2, 5, 8, and 9, and the South Estonian period blended with the Norwegian periods. I may say that in South Estonia, Konrad Mägi had a depression, and this caused that many students associated the dark theme and depression works with the use of drugs. And it can be said that the strange-looking works painted under the influence of drugs stand out to students more than works in which are painted when the author is sober. Here you can see the painting number 2 and 5. These are the drug-painted works. And also 8 and 9. The 9th one is depression work. And now you can see the pictures I use in my experiment. The pictures are in the same order as they were in my experiment. As I said, at the Åland Islands, the paintings were just normal. Here you can see that in Norway, the paintings may be affected because of the drugs. And in South Estonia, the paintings are very depressive. Thank you for listening, and here are my opponent's questions.
Thank you, Liisa. And indeed, it's time for questions once again.
Thank you. How did the author come up with the idea for this research paper?
Last year we had a biology class where we talked about the central nervous system, and I really like this theme. I also like psychology a lot, so me and my supervisor came out to this idea to combine these 2 things.
And looking back, what was the most interesting part of doing this research?
I think that the most interesting part to me was the experiment and the results, because to me these 4 pictures painted under the influence of chalks were so clear and obvious, but the results showed that to many students it wasn't that clear at all.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's very, very interesting what you have done. My question is, Konrad Mägi is a very highly valued artist in Estonia. His paintings cost very much. And which drug is the best to get the most high price for? Which period his paintings are most valued? His heroine pictures or a bit boring Åland pictures?
I didn't research that, but I think that the Norwegian period paintings, because they are so interesting and they are different from the other periods.
Okay, and it would be interesting to analyze other artists and how their health condition was during their works. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. It was a beautiful combination of art and biology. But what is your personal opinion? Art world being more versatile than ever, does an artist basically have to do drugs to stand out nowadays, or?
No, I don't think that, but most central, the drugs affect the works, and as you can see, the works that were painted under the influence of drugs, they stand out more and they are more interesting. But I don't think that artists should use drugs to combine, Yeah,
good. So the classics are still in. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree that the work was truly interesting. I was wondering, maybe I didn't catch that, but how do we know exactly that Konrad Mägi used drugs?
I researched, and his biography had noted that he was very ill and suffered from very much pain, and back then doctors gave painkillers. Back then the legal painkillers were cocaine and morphine, and it is possible that Konrad Mägi used them because he was in so much pain that time.
Okay, and another question, is there a possibility to do a similar research regarding alcohol?
Yeah, I think that it is possible, but I don't think that the alcohol affects that much the works, because drugs are they most centrally they affect the central nervous system, but alcohol it's less what's the word? It's less effective on the central nervous system than drugs are.
Do we have questions from the audience? You do? Of course. We'll get you a personal microphone for tomorrow.
What is the time span from Åland period to up to South Estonian period? I mean, it's a development in painting at that time too. Have you seen if he's improving his technique just because of drugs, or just because the development of painting techniques?
It is possible that the time affected these works too, but my research based on the hypothesis that when he used drugs, later then he had a depression, and the depression affected these works so much. And
what was the time span from the Åland period to South Estonian? 10, 20, 30, 40 years?
5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anyone have other questions? I think not, as the day has shown. So, thank you, Lisa. Isn't it nice to mow in the heat of the sun? Everyone definitely enjoys it. Ants Adine and Markus Neimanis from Jurmala will give us an idea what are the impacts of mowing on the biodiversity of vegetation.
Hello, my name is Ante.
My name is Markus.
We come from the Jurmala State Gymnasium, and the name of our work was The Impact of Meadow Mowing on the Biodiversity. And the justification for selecting the topic was we chose the subject because we were interested in the importance of mowing flood meadows, and we also were interested in the impact it has on the vegetation. And there was an interest in whether there were many protected plant species beside the river mouth of Lielpe.
The aim of this work is to find out the impact of mowing of meadows in the mouth of Lielpe on vegetation. The tasks of this work: explore available scientific literature and familiarize ourselves with plant botanical characteristics. Find the most suitable meadows and choose the location of plots for research purposes. To enlist the vegetation in the meadows and determine occurrence of the plants in the plots.
The hypothesis: annual mowing of meadows increases plant diversity in them and helps to preserve many protected plant species. The research was done next to Lielpe, near Majori Bulduri, and it was done using the brown blanket cover abundance scale for vegetation analysis. And in the photo you can see an example of the plots that we chose and worked with, and you can see the layout of them.
The management of flood meadows. Flood meadows are often flooding areas along river banks. Flood meadows serve as feeding and living places for different animals. Flood meadows can be mowed in several ways: mechanically, by animals, or by controlled burning. Flood meadows of the mouth of Lielpe. The grasslands of the mouth of Lielpe consist of 4 separate sites: Dubultu meadows, Major Buldru meadows, Priedainas meadows, and Buļciema meadows. The studies required for this work were carried out in Major Buldru meadows. In 2004, the Latvian Nature Fund included Lielpe's flood meadows in European Network of Protected Sites, Natura 2000. This nature conservation plan provides for renewal of management in most closed areas.
The practical part of the work. The studies were the easiest to carry out when most of the plants growing in the grasslands are blooming and can be easily recognized. And therefore the studies were carried out at the beginning of summer 2020. And the research was done using the brown blanket method, and a full range of plants was considered, which makes it possible to better understand the relationship between plants and the environment. And the main task of the practical part was to identify each variety of plants present and their approximate percentage in the plot. And we used one primary table, and it marked each recognized plant and its approximate percentage in the plot. And in the first photo you can see an example of the primary table, and in the second photo you can see a decipherment of the primary table. And the study showed that there was a much smaller plant diversity in the plots that were overgrown, and a larger portion of plants growing on the mowed part of the meadow don't even appear in the unmown parts. The overgrown plots were very cluttered and nearly 100% covered in plants.
The targets and tasks of the work has been met. The available and necessary information from reliable sources was examined, and the botanical characteristics of the various plants were identified. Most suitable meadows were found for studies, and plot placements were selected for research purposes. In 2020, from 26th to 27th of June, the practical part of the work was carried out. The occurrence of plants in the plots was determined, and conclusions were made. The conclusions. The hypothesis was confirmed when conducting studies on compiling results. Meadows that are regularly mowed have a much greater variety of vegetation than meadows which are gradually growing. Research on selected plots succeeded in finding protected flowers and hearing the birds that are living in those meadows. There are a very small variety of plants in the unmowed parts of the meadows.
And these are the sources of information used. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ans and Marcus. Is there a specific time when it is a good thing? When is the best time to do the annual mowing?
Yeah, actually, the best time when to do the mowing is when all of the flowers have bloomed and all of the seeds have been spread out, and it's usually at the end of August. That's when it's best to do the mowing.
Okay.
Thank you. When you say the best time is then in the end of August, then which was the impact of the mowing it by the peasants in the 19th century? Because all these lands were used as grasslands for the cows and so on. And this mowing time was in end of June or beginning of July. And when is there any comparisons nowadays and in the 19th century?
Well, that really wasn't the aim of this work, to compare it to the history, but I think the plant diversity has grown since then. We have a lot of new plants that have come into Latvia, and yeah.
Okay, but mowing in the wrong time is better than not mowing anymore.
Actually, yes, because if you don't mow the meadows, they just grow full of weeds, and they overtake every other plant, and they are really tall, and no sun gets to the smaller plants, and yeah.
Thank you.
How large were the meadows in like square meters or square kilometers or whatever?
How big they are?
Yes.
I'm not.
Just a round figure.
I'm not really sure.
1 kilometer times 1 kilometer or something.
Much bigger.
Much bigger, yes.
A lot bigger.
When you did you looked for different varieties of plants. How many different varieties did you find?
We found a lot. There's the table was like three pages long, and we didn't count the exact number, but it was a lot.
So you identified them all, or?
Yeah, we tried to identify them all. We had books and books and books, and we sat there in the grasslands, in the meadows, on a blanket, and tried to.
And what was the difference in where they didn't mow the meadows and where they did? How was the difference in plant numbers?
Oh yeah, there was a big difference, because in the mown parts, the grass was lower, so there was a lot of flowers and a lot of like plants that you can put into tea, and it was a lot of plants. But in the unmown part, there was just this tall grass and almost nothing else, and that's it. Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. Thank you.
Does somebody else have some sort of question? Oh, yes.
I was wondering, did you look into an option or like an alternative using cattle or like herding, I think, like just cows grazing on the grasslands instead of like actually mowing? Would it be better, more beneficial?
I think that if you let cows in those meadows, I think it would be a lot better than when you do it mechanically, because when you mow with the tractor, you can hurt some animals that are living in those meadows. And overall, I don't know if I can say that, but if the cow shits there, the plants grow better.
Of course. Thank you.
And to finish today, let's take a look into a family. Robin Lieber will prove and disprove family lore on the example of his grandmother, Sylvie Lieber. Here we go.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Lieber, and I made my research on a topic of proving and disproving family law on the example of my grandmother, Sylvie Lieber. The supervisor of this research was our school's headmaster, Mari Roostik. So, the first and most important aim of this research was to verify, so to speaking, disprove and prove as much family law as possible. Also, finding new information was also relevant, but it was secondary, and which was maybe important when we speak about whole genealogy world, about aspects of whole genealogy world. Then the digitalized materials and data is also utterly important to at all compare or analyze anything at all. So, the main and most important source was my grandmother's memories that her grandmother told her. So it was not some kind of resemblances or just oral history, it was oral tradition. And I also used Estonian historian's Aadu Must literature that he has published, and some unpublished documents that I digitalized were also used in the research, for example, birth certificates or so on. And maybe one which I used maybe the most, but you know, there were some mistaken sources also combined there, and I'm talking about sources from databases and Estonian National Archives databases. So there were relevant sources, but there were also sources that gave incorrect information. So this is only a fraction of links that I used from the Estonian National Archive. And when you open them up, then something like that appears. So this is a page from Lutheran Church. Everything relevant is there written, but as you can see, the condition isn't the best one, and you have to also know Russian, German, and Old Estonian to understand anything from there, to have any information gotten from there. So, because of the fact that in Estonia there hadn't been this kind of research before, that somebody had recorded oral tradition, I had to construct my own methodology. For that, I selected suitable topics that I could discuss with my grandmother, and I conducted half-structured interviews. So I filtered the facts from the not so important details, for example, that my grandmother's grandmother was a beautiful woman, for example. I cannot prove or disprove, but we will speak about that later. And then I found sources from archives. So can I prove or can I not prove this thing? It was actually really important. And the last part was the analyzing and comparing. So, but for analyzing, you need some kind of structure. So I made a classification which was following, we had unverifiable claims. For example, this is my grandmother's grandmother beautiful or not? Sadly, I cannot verify that. There were claims with insufficient information. I just couldn't find suitable sources from Estonian National Archive to prove or disprove some information. And then, of course, there were verifiable claims that I could then correct or say that, oh, this is incorrect. And this all comes in because oral tradition is subjective interpretation of the past. So there isn't only one truth there. There might be several of them, and you just have to keep that in mind when you do the research. So the results. I confirmed the nature of oral tradition, that it declined when researching further in time, and what was remembered mostly were the intriguing and emotional parts. So it's also important, and that's actually the nature of oral tradition. So I digitalized a lot of data, for example, old photos and documents. I investigated up until the year 1807 because just limits came up, and I couldn't more. I thought I might set some limits somewhere. So this was a nice year to put the limits. And I also found the living relatives, which was surprising for me as a researcher. They didn't know about us and we didn't know about them before. So here's a picture to illustrate the length of my research. We only knew, the oral tradition only knew 4 generations, but as you can see there are 8 of them here pictured. So every one of them has their own stories, and I had to prove them or disprove how much the oral tradition was. It was only 4 of them, but with others I had to rely on Estonian National Archives documents. And also the photos that are digitalized, they are about my ancestors, and yeah, now they are digitalized. Before they were not. So, thank you.
Thank you. How often did the author face the topics which differed from each other in the family law and official documents throughout 3 centuries because of the political situation?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Actually, we don't know the reason why they changed. We just know that some stories changed and some didn't. And we actually don't know why they changed. So I cannot actually give answer to this question.
How did the family members react to the stories and facts that were incorrect?
Mm-hmm. One might think that they were upset or angry about, like, their memories weren't correct, but actually they just, when they understood that there are some factual proof behind those claims, then they just accepted it, and they were quite happy that now that they know the truth.
And in which way could this research and acquired knowledge be used in order to archive more family tradition?
I hope this research helps to popularize, especially among the youth, to just take matters to own hands and start to investigate family trees and everything that is connected to that. So I hope this research helps to popularize it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work. It was really interesting. I was wondering whether you know whether in Estonia it is popular to search your family trees, or is it not so popular, and how we can make it more popular. One thing is to do such research, but do we have to talk more about it on media, for example?
Actually, in Estonia, it has been popularized even more and more in past years, because we have now a documentary in national broadcast system where some experts go and research famous people's backgrounds. So I hope this also helps. And you have to have literature. And Aho Must, I think, Estonian historian, has done a great job with that. So we have the literature that one needs to start at all, and the digitalization part is also important. So you can watch the documents online. You don't have to go there in some locations or whatever.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. My question is, did you take contact to these new relatives you have found?
I did, and they are also as surprised as I am that, and they are not so far away from us. Mm. So it's like grandmother's uncle relatives then, like their grandchildren then, basically.
And living next door.
Yeah, exactly, in the same city. So it was a surprise for me and surprise for them.
Okay, and was there some hidden story of your family that came to the light through your research?
Actually, there were quite many of them, but yeah, exactly. But the problem with them was that I couldn't prove or disprove them. They were the claims with insufficient information, and I just couldn't prove or disprove them.
But they were hidden until now, and not a differing story that grandmother's was talking, but you found a totally new story.
This kind of thing didn't happen because with the documents it's quite strict, and there isn't so much emotional, I don't know, things coming out. There are just data, so you can't put the story around them. So yeah, that can be a problem, but that can be also not be a problem.
Yes. So thank you very much. It was very impressive what you have done.
Thank you, Robin. It was really an entertaining presentation you gave us. I've always thought of this kind of work to be really time-consuming. How was it for you? How much time did you spend in the National Archive, for example?
Oh, I even can't add up. Because you just have to be constantly there. Because when there is a pause, then you might forget some relevant details that you had to know about a certain person. So when you have somebody from centuries ago, from generations ago, all the information just you can't memorize it all. So you have to. Yeah, it was a lot of work, and actually I don't know how many hours I spent there in the websites of Estonian National Archive and so on. But it was, yeah, you have to understand that it's time consuming when you started with it, but it's worth it also.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, digging up 8 generations seems like a massive job, but thank you.
one of the dangers with this kind of research is how to not affect the object when you ask questions from your grandmother. Did you think about that, how to avoid the danger of affecting her memory and stories?
Actually, I used the half-structured interviews because it gave us time to actually filter out the facts. So there couldn't be some interference or something like that. So there was a time for her to think what she actually knows and what does she remember at all. And so I think we made a couple of sessions actually. So it wasn't like one time it just pop up and oh yeah, now tell me all the stories. It was a long process for her to think actually which were the actual things that happened in her memory.
Did she change the stories between those different occasions?
Actually, a little bit, but they were more detailed. So it wasn't like it. In the first time, it wasn't so detailed, but when she started to think about very constantly, then the stories became more detailed.
I can't let my teacher take all the honor. So, how extensive are the Estonian archives? Like, well, first of all, is it only the dates and the occupations that you could prove? Yeah, that you could prove, or is it more than that? And like, yeah, what information could you get, and how easy was it?
Mm-hmm. Most of the sources and materials that are used were parish documents, Lutheran churches' personal books, and registration books. Registration books are quite an interesting thing because Estonia was part of the Russian Empire, and the Russian Empire decided to go on with some registration forms, but only one in 4 years. So you have quite a detailed information network, and you just have to find out right things where to find. So Estonian National Archive actually gives you the opportunity to discover different sources. So it's not like I'm only discovering the sources of Lutheran Church. You also must know about parish documents and so on. So it's quite a variety there.
So the day has ended. I'd like to thank all the presenters, the defense committee, the listeners, and Henrik, who was invested in this whole conference for the whole 8 hours. You can give a round of applause to yourself and to others. And what will happen next? We'll meet at Cafe Shakespeare at 17:30, and after that